The afternoon sun burned over the dry plains when Jacob Turner, a widowed father with calloused hands and dust in his beard, pulled his wagon to the side of the trail. The axle cracked clean through after miles of rattling over stone and heat. His young daughter, Lily, barely 9, sat on the wagon bench clutching her mother's old shawl while his teenage son, Ben, worked silently beside him, both of them thin from a long season of poor harvests. Jacob had buried his wife 2 winters ago and since then had carried on out of duty, not hope, hauling freight for whatever coins he could get. That day he was headed to the next town to look for work at a ranch rumored to need laborers before winter. But the broken wheel killed that chance, leaving him stranded miles from any help and low on water. He was still tightening the rope around the splintered wood when the sound of hooves broke the silence. Steady, light, sure. A lone rider emerged through the dust, a woman in a dark green riding coat, her auburn hair tied neatly, her expression feigned but curious. "You're blocking half the trail," she said as she dismounted, her tone sharp but not unkind. Jacob wiped his brow. Wheels snapped. "Just trying to brace it till I can make town." She crouched beside the wagon, examining the damage like she'd seen 100 wagons before. "You'll need a new spoke and proper grease or you won't make it half a mile," she said, pulling off her gloves. "I can help." Jacob blinked, taken aback. "You sure? Ain't right a lady dotying her hands on another man's wagon." She smirked faintly. "I've fixed worse. Hand me that wrench." Weeks passed. Jacob stayed, working dawn to dusk repairing fences, tending cattle, and fixing wagons. The ranch thrived under their shared effort. Claire rode out each morning, commanding respect from hired hands who had once doubted her. The townsfolk whispered about the widowed father and the woman who owned the land, but neither paid mind. The children grew strong. Laughter filled the yard again. But one night, a storm rolled in from the west, fierce and sudden, tearing through the valley with wind that screamed like grief. A flash flood tore through the creek bed, threatening the barn where the year's grain was stored. Jacob ran into the rain, shouting orders. "Ben, get the horses. Lily, stay with Miss Claire." Lightning split the sky as water surged through the lower field. He waded waist-deep to pull open the barn gate when a crashing branch knocked him off his feet. Claire saw him vanish into the dark and ran after him without hesitation. Together they fought the water, dragging sacks to higher ground until the storm passed and the world fell still again. When dawn broke, the barn still stood, half-flooded but upright. The workers arrived to find Jacob slumped near the door, soaked but alive, Claire kneeling beside him, her hand on his shoulder. For the second time, they had saved each other. In the weeks that followed, as the land dried and life resumed, something shifted between them. He began to notice the way her voice softened when she spoke to Lily, or how she looked at him when she thought he wasn't watching. She, in turn, found comfort in his steady silence, his unspoken faith. One evening, as they mended the corral fence, she said, "You ever think maybe God don't always take? Sometimes he trades." He frowned. "Trades? Takes one kind of love and gives another back later. Not the same, but still good." He looked at her for a long moment before replying, "If that's true, maybe I owe him thanks." Winter came early. One morning, a letter arrived from the county assessor. Tax collectors planned to seize the ranch unless a long overdue debt was paid. Claire had the letter at first, waking twice as hard, but Jacob found it under a ledger. "You should have told me," he said. "It's my burden," she answered. "Your burden's ours now," he said firmly. Without waiting, he rode into town, sold his wagon, tools, even his late wife's ring, and brought back enough to cover the missing payment. She tried to protest, tears filling her eyes, but he placed the coins on the table. "You gave us a home," he said. "Let me give something back." She couldn't speak. That night, she stood outside as snow began to fall, watching him repair a roof beam by lantern light, his silhouette steady and sure, and she whispered, "You don't even know what you've given me." Spring thawed the land. The ranch, once nearly lost, bloomed with new life. Fields turned green, calves filled the pens, and laughter returned to the porch. One evening, as the sun fell behind the hills, Jacob came to the veranda where Claire sat reading. "I've been thinking," he said quietly. "The children call this home now. I reckon I do too." She closed her book. "Then stay." "You sure?" "I was sure the day your wagon broke on that road," she said. "Just didn't know how to tell you." He smiled, the first full smile she'd ever seen from him. "Then I guess the wheel wasn't broken after all," he said. "It just needed to stop long enough for me to find where I belonged." That night, the family ate together in the glow of the hearth, no longer strangers, no longer lost. And though the world beyond their fence still held hardship, in that house, under that roof, they found something stronger than survival. They found grace, built not from riches or luck, but from. Together they worked under the burning sun, sweat mixing with dust, hands blistering against metal and wood. Lily fetched water. Ben held the wheel steady, and for the first time in months, Jacob heard his children laugh at the woman's calm humor. She was direct, capable, and seemed to know every trick for patching broken things. Metal, wood, even spirits. When the job was done, she sat back on her heels, hands covered in grease. "You're a stubborn man," she said. "I said fix it temporary, not rebuild the thing." Jacob smiled faintly, rare for him. A man learns to make things last when he can't afford to lose them. She looked at his children, then back at him, eyes softening. "Where you headed?" "East of Dry Hollow. Heard the Miller Ranch is hiring before winter." She hesitated. "That road's long and mean. You'll need water and supplies. I've got a cabin not far from here, 2 miles north. You can rest there tonight." He almost refused out of pride, but Lily's tired eyes decided it for him. "We're grateful," he said quietly. The cabin sat near Dried Creek, small but well kept, with a barn and a corral that hinted she lived alone. Inside, the scent of coffee and soap filled the air. She introduced herself as Claire, no last name offered, and served them stew and bread that tasted like mercy. As the children slept on a rug near the fire, Jacob sat at the table, uneasy at the kindness of a stranger. "You live here alone?" he asked. "Mostly," she said. "My brother helps with business in town, but I like quiet." "Brave choice," he muttered. "These lands don't treat folks kindly." "Kindness has to start somewhere," she said softly, her eyes distant. In the morning, she offered them supplies, jerky, a water flask, and a bundle of cloth for the wheel. Jacob tried to refuse, but she folded his hand over the pack. "Don't be proud," she said. "Just promise you'll make it safe." He nodded, then hitched the wagon. But before leaving, Ben pointed toward the ridge. "Pa, there's smoke." They turned to see a small fire in the distance, brush flames near a dry field. Claire's face drained. "That's my cattle line," she said. "If it spreads, it'll burn through the fences." Without a thought, Jacob jumped from the wagon. "Get the shovels," he barked to Ben. They raced toward the flames, beating down fire with coats and wet sacks. Hours passed in choking smoke, the heat tearing their throats raw. But Jacob refused to stop until the last ember died. When it was over, he stood blackened and coughing, and Claire came beside him, eyes glistening. "You could have let it go," she whispered. "You didn't owe me a thing." He shrugged. "Wouldn't be right. You helped me first." That night, when the stars came out over the scarred field, she told him the truth. "The Miller Ranch," she said, "that's mine." He froze. "Yours?" "My father built it. He passed last spring. Folks in town don't think a woman can run it. I've been looking for men who don't scare easy." He looked down, ashamed of his dusty clothes, his worn boots, his smallness. "You could have told me." "Would you have treated me the same?" she asked quietly. He said nothing. "I saw how you worked, how you put your children first, how you fought the fire like the land was your own. That's the kind of man I need." She paused. "Stay. I'll pay fair wages. There's room in the bunkhouse. The children can go to school in town." He hesitated, torn between pride and relief. "You don't owe me charity." "It's not charity," she said. "It's sense." And with that, she walked back toward the barn, leaving him staring at the moonlit field that had nearly burned. That night, as his children slept again in her cabin, Jacob sat awake, the wind rustling the trees outside. For the first time since his wife's death, he felt something he thought he'd lost. Purpose. Kindness repaid. From two broken souls who fixed each other the way they'd once fixed a wagon on a lonely road.